Welcome to the Kingscrowd Investment Roundtable. This week, we are going to be diving into a company that is currently raising on Republic, and that company is BitterBrains. My name's Brian. I'm your host. I'm the Vice President of Product here at Kingscrowd. I am joined, as always, by our two awesome investment analysts, Léa and Teddy. Welcome to both of you. Let's jump right in. I will pull up the raise page, but Léa, can you give us a quick overview of BitterBrains and what the company does?
Yes, BitterBrains is an online education company that is focusing on helping developers learn new coding languages and pass related certifications. So BitterBrains actually encountered success when it launched the Vue School, VUE for those who don't know what that is. And a lot of developers join this company in order to learn this language, and they also pass certifications. The company already is making more than $2 million, and more than half of its revenue is thanks to the Vue School. Right now, BitterBrains is trying to launch new certification for new languages such as React, and is going to try to replicate the success it had with Vue with these new certifications. A couple of good, interesting things about BitterBrains is the product. So the company built a technology to help developers not only learn, but also have interesting certifications to pass online. And the founder of Vue is also one of the advisors of the company and help them build that certification. So for those who have no idea what Vue or React mean, Brian, can you please give us a little bit of background, explain to us what are these different languages?
Absolutely. So Vue or Vue.js is a JavaScript framework. So if you interact with any web page nowadays, usually the web pages are reactive. What that means, right, is, for example, if you're looking at the screen share here, when I click add to watch list, it's not going to do a full page reload. There are elements that are happening in the background and using JavaScript that allows you to take some of these actions without actually leaving the screen, and it updates the view. Now, this page does not run on Vue or React, but that gives you an idea of these frameworks that use JavaScript that make websites more interactive. So Vue is one of these big ones that is pretty popular among developers. Now, React is very, very popular. So when we were talking to the founder of BitterBrains, they actually thought that the opportunity in the React market to be able to move their certification and their courses over there could potentially be as big as 10 times bigger than what it was for Vue. Now, a little bit more history. React was actually started at Facebook. So it was developed internally, and then they actually released it to the world as one of these frameworks, so that both of these JavaScript frameworks, as well as things like Angular and then other potential programming languages, so they could get into Python and Laravel, which is a PHP framework. These are all the different ones that they are considering today when we were talking to the founder. Now, a few other key things just to be aware of, right? So when developers are coming up with a web page and doing some of this work, a lot of developers are actually self-taught nowadays. So especially, I think if you go to that 2020, 2021 timeframe, a lot of people, right, were out of jobs. They were trying to pick up some work on the side. And so, personally, I actually came across this product before I knew anything about BitterBrains. I didn't know of them back in 2020, 2021. But I took this course called Mastering Nuxt, which at the time, Nuxt is basically just another part of Vue. It helped me to learn how to do that, to create some different websites. And then you can see that Nuxt 2 was kind of the prior version. They've now launched Nuxt 3 and the courses associated with that. So this is actually the BitterBrains Nuxt Mastering Nuxt course website, and you can see it's very well done in my opinion. Very modern, which you hope it would be, given that it was built by developers. It integrates directly with your GitHub account, which can also be very helpful. But this is just one of many of the courses and certifications. So, Léa, you want to talk a little bit more just about their product roadmap in terms of some of the things that they were talking about and some of the revenue sources, like where is their revenue coming from today?
Yes, right now about out of the 2 million-ish in revenue that the company generated in 2023, which is actually the revenue is supposed to stay stable in 2024. About 1 million is going to be coming from different certifications. So Vue is a certification, but there are other certifications that the company has been developing and launched on the website. $800,000 is coming from the Vue courses. So these are people that are not taking the certification, but still paying BitterBrains to learn about Vue. And the rest of the revenue is coming from the other courses. The company has been already getting customers from all across the world, and they adapt their prices based on the location. So the course that is going to cost you about $250,000 in the United States is only going to cost you $80 in Brazil or in India. I asked the founder if I could put my VPN in Brazil. He said, yes, you can do it, but that's going to be a little bit complicated and the language might change. So you know what, if you're fluent in Portuguese, you can always try to do that. But I don't think that's a big challenge for the company. They have people that are willing to pay it in the United States, willing to pay these prices. Where I think that Vue is an interesting company is that it has been able to actually grow its revenue pretty considerably in between 2022 and 2023. The risk now is that the revenue has been stagnating in 2024 because, according to the founder, the company has been developing new products and is trying to replicate its Vue success with other languages. As an investor, I like to think about the competition. I think that BitterBrains does have competition. Some is coming from, for example, from websites like Coursera, where I know that Meta, IBM have React certifications on this website. Some is coming from W3, which is a poorly designed but free website to actually learn how to code. Sorry for the poorly design, but that's only my opinion. It's not as interactive as BitterBrains. But I also think that some of the competition can come not only from all the coding academies that there are out there, but also from the no-code company. So, Brian, as a developer, can you tell us a bit more of your opinion on the competition? And do you think that no-code is a big competitor for BitterBrains?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time right now because I think it was maybe a few months back, if I recall, I believe it was the CEO of NVIDIA basically said, if you're going to school nowadays, don't even learn development because in the future, AI is going to be able to do so much of it. Now, do I personally believe, we're going to get there either in the near enough future or that you wouldn't have to know any development knowledge? Probably not, because, I think it still helps even when you're using these tools and different AI tools, which I think AI can be a potential big competitor here. You have to have some level of understanding where the tools are great for taking instruction and writing code, but having that higher level foundational understanding of just what it is you're trying to build and being able to architect the system, that's something that at least the AI systems aren't that, really good at today, where you can't be self-sufficient, where it's, build me an app. Now, we're getting close to that with OpenAI's, O1 model that they've launched. Some of it is starting to reflect more, and it can, when you work with it and iterate with it, come up with good things. But in the near term, I don't see that as like a huge competitor here. Now, you mentioned, yes, if you take a look at what they did in Vue, so as you mentioned, Evan Yu, who is the creator of Vue, being able to be an advisor to this company and being able to give his buy-in and basically kind of approval of their certification, that was huge for them, for Vue, I think, and probably led to why they were able to get so much traction without a lot of paid advertising. However, the question in my mind is, can they replicate that success with React, for example? Especially since React, came out of Facebook. Are they going to be able to get the same type of buy-in and credibility of their brand and their certifications and courses to be able to replicate some of that success with Vue? Now, Teddy, I want to get you involved in this too.
Yep.
Taking a look at this from kind of that EdTech perspective, but what's your impression of the company and the opportunity here?
Yeah, so my biggest question I think I have is, given how many different coding languages there are and variations of them, what's the resource intensity required by BitterBrains to develop a high quality course like this? And I assume that kind of feeds into their margin profile, which I don't know too much about, but curious on, if Brian, in terms of how many coding languages there are, how long do you think and how much human labor do they go take to really put together one of these courses and have it be to the quality that you've seen them already produced before?
Yeah, you bring up two important points. So to answer your question, there's definitely tons and tons of frameworks and coding languages out there. As we mentioned, Vue is a very popular JavaScript framework, but React, if it is truly 10 times bigger, and if you look at just the number of downloads of those packages, it's very widely used. So there's definitely a big potential market there where they could get a small part of it. Now, the other thing with most coding languages and frameworks is that they evolve and you're getting new versions, right? So we're on Vue 3 versus Vue 2, and each few years, there's going to be updates where developers need to get some of that updated knowledge. So there is the ability for them to also potentially get, I think, that recurring revenue component in their business where they're going to have to be updating it. But to your point, they're going to have to be developing those courses. Now, the second point that you were kind of touching on, I want to make sure we also talk about is BitterBrains. It has these courses, right? And they mentioned that actually the certifications have been a little bit more of the successful part of their most recent revenues, where they actually see that's the opportunity. So they have the potential to partner and get some more certifications. But on top of that, when Leigh and I interviewed the founder, he was talking about building this technology platform, right? He was talking about it as a platform they're building and even potentially a certification platform that others could build on top of. So it's not just an education company building courses. But Léa, can you talk a little bit more about that opportunity and what you think the potential is there?
Other certification companies can host their own certification on BitterBrains platform. That will mean that they will use the technology of BitterBrains, and bring their own students on the BitterBrains platform for their students to actually pass the certification. So they're going to be kind of a revenue share model for BitterBrains. Right now, they have one company that already signed up for that. They're going to start with a first setup fee of $5,000 and then a monthly fee that it will be starting at $500, but that can quickly increase to a couple $1,000s every month, based on the amount of students that they will actually get. I think that there is a pretty significant growth opportunity here because it's very important for a company that wants to scale to be able to do things in a less capital intensive way and not having to build courses, but being able to use other people's courses, other people's certification to make money and being able to use that platform with only a little bit of overhead and fee every time they put a new certification on that platform is something that can truly help them grow. One thing that we need to remember about BitterBrains is that this is a bootstrap company. For about 6 years, they had a revenue growth, but really wasn't that impressive because they were focused on courses. It's when they launched the certification that they realized that they really were finding a market here, because even if a lot of developers are not interested in certification, they realized that there is a big share of the market there is. So Teddy, can you tell us a little bit more about what are the advantages and inconvenience of investing in a company that bootstrap and never got money from any outsider investors?
Yeah, so the key difference between those two is when you look at a venture-backed firm, generally VC investors want to see hyper growth, like year over year, as quickly as possible to eventually get to an exit that will be, a solid multiple of their revenues, which they hope to be as high as possible. Whereas bootstrap companies, the founders of those, they're not under any type of high pressure from a VC investor to necessarily grow at all costs unprofitably and just kind of boost the top line as quickly as possible. They're way more focused on, okay, this is the capital we have that we ourselves probably put in the company, and how do we get this to a self-sustaining business as opposed to just growing revenue as quick as possible. So generally with bootstrap companies, you see a bit of a much slower growth curve, but generally the health of the overall financials is higher because generally they're pretty close to profitability. They've probably had some profitable months, but really just kind of focused in that kind of survival mode and grow as sustainably as possible. So, from an investment perspective, bootstrap founders, that's obviously very hard to do and is definitely a positive when you're evaluating a founder and how they're managing their company. If they're successfully bootstrapping, that's definitely a great thing to see. But as a strict investor, you do want to see as much growth as possible. So it's kind of like, as a retail investor, you're kind of in between the kind of like the VC and like the bootstrap company. It's like, yeah, it's just a different type of analysis than like a VC analysis would be.
But just to show real quick, so their organic growth chart here, Yes, they're growing slower, but they still achieved a median 70% year over year. So, you can see they almost 4x'd till 2018, almost doubled, 50% growth, 50% growth, 40% growth. So the difference, I think, is kind of Teddy was alluding to, right? If you're that VC-backed company, they want to see 2 to 3x ARR increases year over year, right? So it's a lot higher. However, one of the things, like as an investor, when I'm looking at a chart, if you see consistent year over year growth, even at the 50 to 70% range, now granted, you need to look at the denominator. So in the early years, right, you're growing. It's kind of easier to grow, say, 4x when you're only starting at 60,000. But if you can grow, from 1 million to 1.4 to 2.8, that's pretty impressive, especially if that's all organic from my perspective. But that's, definitely the difference there. Now, another thing I think when investors are taking a look at this is, what do the exit opportunities for a company like this look like? Léa, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the feedback or some of the input that you got from the founder in terms of what potential exits might be.
Yes, the founder is interested in an acquisition, which is a good sign and definitely what I think will be doable. I don't think the company can grow fast enough or even high enough at this point based on what it is today to ever get the chance to do an IPO. We've looked at comparables, and we've seen that similar companies in the coding space, in the education space, with kind of that technology backend, like BitterBrains have been actually acquired at 9 to 11x revenue to valuation multiple, which is pretty high for an education company. And that shows that there's both market demand, but also a good technological component. The good thing here, and I think that is one of the consequences that BitterBrains never raised from VC, is that the revenue valuation multiple is actually around 5x. This is pretty low when we know that the company could possibly be acquired at a 10x multiple. So I don't want to say it's undervalued, but it's at least fairly valued. I feel like $13 million at this stage is pretty good. There's still a risk because, as we've been repeating since the beginning, we don't know whether the company will actually be able to replicate this success, because that's the limit of an education business, is that for every new certification, there's a ceiling that the company will hit and they need to constantly launch new products. But this is pretty positive for me.
Yeah, I think the gold standard in this space probably is Coursera. They raised Series F at a 2.4 billion valuation in 2020. Looks like that was about an 8x revenue multiple, and now they're public, obviously, and they're at like 700 million in yearly revenue. So it's kind of the gold standard. Kind of shows companies can grow in this space, but obviously it's a long road. I mean, Coursera's like 13, 14 years old company. And so
Coursera, very wide, right? They have a whole bunch of topics. So another one in the space of the acquisitions that Léa was referring to is Code Academy. So they were acquired for around roughly 525 million in 2021 at that similar revenue multiple range. So, also take into account, so 2021, maybe the revenue multiple was a little high because a lot of valuations at the time, right? Some, especially like fintech kind of online companies were getting pretty good premiums in terms of revenue multiples. But there's potential there. I mean, a 525 million acquisition for a Code Academy website, business is definitely nothing to scoff at. Great. Well, I think we'll wrap things up there. A couple quick notes for all of our viewers. So we are going to be taking a quick break for the next 2 weeks due to the holiday. So we will be back here again in early January in 2025. So thank you to all of you for following us throughout 2024. We have a lot more great content and data analysis in store for you and planned for 2025. So make sure you come back and check us out then. Also, if you're not already, feel free to get our free data-driven newsletter at pitchreviews.com. We share a lot of the same data insights that we cover here today, and you'll also get a pitch review each week. Or head over to Kingscrowd.com, where you can take a look at all of these companies and dive into that data, the ratings, and the analytics yourself when you're looking for new investments or just trying to track your own startup investments. My name is Brian. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see everyone back here in 2025.